welcome to Celtic State of Mind. I'm delighted to be here. My name's John Dykes and I'm joined by John Paul Mason, PJ and JP. It's Thursday and it's been a quick week. JP, it doesn't seem that long since I last spoke to you, but we're in buoyant mood. Celtic are clicking into place. I mean, the tagline says it all. From swashbuckling to total control, are we seeing the two sides of Ange's Celtic? Well, we had a wee chat before we came on there, and I think a big part of the two sides of Celtic last night was down to the involvement and otherwise of Tommy Rogic. I mean, he was inspired prior to being forced off, injured JP, and we'll talk about that and the wider issue around some of the treatment of our players. But let's just take a wee moment to talk about Tommy Rogic first and foremost. What a performance last night.
Aye, really great. I got a few texts throughout the game just going, how good is Rogic in this game? And, I couldn't disagree with it. I mean, it was not that I would want to disagree with it, because this is a guy that's done so much for Celtic over the last however many, 6-7 seasons. I know he's been missing in action. I know he was nearly out the door. But everybody, I mean, he's only he's got to be like 28 or something like that.
28 years of age.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody, when he was linked, you saw people started posting tributes to him leaving.
Yep.
When it was kind of widely expected that he was going, and I was seeing loads of people saying thanks for the memories and posting up, the video from Hampden and everything else. But it went kind of beyond that as well. I think people really appreciated what he'd done. If you're talking about testimonials, he's heading for one of them. And people. The thing is, we joked about Near Beaton getting a testimonial, which does seem a little bit farcical given his contribution over the time. But if Rogic was to get close to that, I think you would find that would be something that would be really well received by the fans, because he's now. This is such an important season for Celtic, and if Tom Rogic continues to turn up this season, then he will go down, and possibly even greater than that goal in the final, because everybody wants to win the league back this season, because it's the first time we've been in this situation where we've all enjoyed such sustained success for so long, and suddenly we got completely and utterly bounced out, and it was over by March. Like it was an alien concept. So if he does turn up and continues to turn up this season, God willing, no injuries and all the rest of it, then his importance can't be underestimated.
Like yourself, I was looking at Tom Rogic earlier on today before coming on. He's a player that I've always enjoyed, but it was a year ago. It was actually in September last year that he was reported to be signing for a Qatari club, unnamed club, for £3.5 million. And at that time, like you say, everybody's looking back on the great moments. I mean, you talk about that, the goal against Aberdeen in the cup final, and the goal against Kilmarnock always comes to mind as well.
Rangers at Ibrox, bottom
Rangers at Ibrox. I mean, he's a wizard. He's an absolute wizard. But at that time, I don't think everybody would have been glad that he was going, but it was almost like, thanks for the memories, Tommy. Maybe it's the best time for both parties for you to move on. And I didn't think at that point that we were going to get a resurgence, a resurrection of Tommy Rogic. When Ange Postecoglou came in, it was obvious that people were going to point to the fact that he had worked with Tom Rogic in the international team. We spoke about some players that might be revitalised. As it happens, a few of them, and we'll talk about at least another one of them, have been. One of them was Ryan Christie, by the way. I mean, the performances we've seen under Postecoglou of Ryan Christie left me a wee bit bitter when he finally left, because I thought he would have fitted in with Ange's game plan. But Tom Rogic, for me, has been one of the biggest surprises, along with Anthony Ralston. Now, you're talking about testimonials, right? He signed in January coming 9 years ago for Celtic.
Right. Wow.
Right?
Okay.
Right? So we've got...
7 or 8, yeah, okay.
That's incredible, eh? And obviously during that time, he's been loaned out. We loaned him out back to Australia so that he could get himself back in the shop window for, I think it was the World Cup at that time. He is only 28, like you said. And I just felt that last night we were seeing him developing into probably his best performance of the season. but he was basically kicked off the park. Now, I've written down 3 occasions where he took heavy tackles. I think at least 2 of them was from Rogic, maybe 3 of them, to the point where he's had to go off after 44 minutes, but he was winning really important free kicks in dangerous areas of the park. Now, so we're talking about Tommy Rogic being at his best, and I think he is coming to that stage now. We might see a Tommy Rogic that's even going to eclipse that moment. And I never thought I'd say that moment with the thunder and the rain and the lightning at Hampden Park. But I think the bigger thing with regards to that is when Rogic came off, we've seen a different style. Now, in the first half, and as I was saying there, swashbuckling kind of style. That was the kind of Ange style that we've seen against, Dundee when we were winning 6-0. Maybe for half an hour against Betis away from home, JP, where we storm into a lead. And we saw that at Easter Road last night. Now, the game plan was hampered somewhat by Rogic having to go off. But what we then seen was the second style that Ange can deploy. We've seen it against Aberdeen and Motherwell. We've seen it against Ferencvaros. Total control. And I think we've seen both sides of Ange Postecoglou last night. Yeah,
I think so. And I think it's so long overdue doing that to Hibs at Easter Road. Can't believe that it's way back in 2014 was the last victory in the league. And you think of the Brendan Rodgers team. Now, I was thinking about that, and then I thought, wait a minute, were Hibs not out of the league? Hibs were out of the league for a period. Am I wrong in saying that?
Well, I remember the game where Neil Lennon brought his Hibs side to Celtic Park after they had been promoted. And he got a really good reception from the Celtic fans, and Rodgers kind of ushered them on to take the applause from the Celtic fans. Yeah. And we failed to beat Hibs in our 2 home games in the league that season as well.
And it's led to an awful lot of, I've got quite a lot of Hibs supporting friends, and they've been crowing about this, hoodoo that they've had over Celtic. And I've been to Easter Road a bunch of times, and I remember going there when if we'd won the game, we would win the league, and we drew 0-0. I think we were wearing the pink strip, if I remember rightly. All ready for a party, I don't think I've ever seen us win the league at an away ground. I've never experienced that. So I was so psyched for that moment. And then 0-0 against Hibs. And then obviously, it was draws last season and they've beaten us as well. So to go and see in the first 15, 20 minutes us absolutely put our foot on their throats, and I got it right this time, was brilliant to watch. It was just like this sustained pressure that they couldn't cope with. Even the most, rabid Hibs fan would have to hold their hands up and go, looking at that first 15, 20 minutes, we're going to get absolutely battered here, because it was just coming at them from every single possible pocket of the pitch. And Rogic was, at the forefront of that. And then you've got, Jota doing that wee back heel, which was total filth. Where he drags it and then flicks it.
It was filth.
I've watched that about 10 times. I've also watched the Rangers penalty about 10 times as well, trying to dissect that, but more on that later, I'm sure. But no, it was just great to watch last night. Wish I'd been there to see it, having experienced the draws and a couple of defeats. But yet again, Easter Road, not full. And, the Celtic end was full, but the Hibs stands weren't, and you're just scratching your head going, how can somebody not, factor that into this situation and, make your club more money? You've got, there would have been guys last night and girls standing outside with money in the air saying, yep, here's money.
Take my money.
You don't want it, okay, you'll have empty seats. And maybe I'm being naive, and maybe there's a factor. I don't think it's COVID. Maybe it's to do with the layout of the ground or something like that. But I would love to speak to somebody at Hibs Ticketing to be like, how could you not factor Celtic fans into that ground last night? Or is it simply because you don't want to, because you don't want us to have some sort of numerical advantage or whatever? But as I've argued before, that didn't work at Livingston because they beat us. So, it shouldn't really matter. It creates a better atmosphere. A game like that was not on the TV last night. It should be absolutely rammed. There shouldn't be able to get a ticket for that game last night. I know it was horrendous weather, admittedly, but people are prepared to brave the elements to go and see their team, you know.
I think the real frustration, we've spoken about it on A Celtic State of Mind, is the inability of so-called big clubs in Scotland, in terms of Scottish football, are still amateurish in many, many ways. I'm not having a dig directly at Hibs, because there are far more clubs in Scotland that I think less of than Hibs, to be fair, JP. But I just think there is this inability, not to cash in, but just to maximise their earnings. I mean, I've given a few examples in the past. There is no other football stadium outside the Celtic Park that I've visited more than Easter Road. And last night, ACSOM was very well represented. I think we had 6 or 7, maybe even 8 of the ACSOM team at that game last night. But it's like what you say. I mean, some of the troops really struggled to get tickets for that game, JP, you know. And it's all about, for me, I just think it's a really backwards kind of attitude. But you were talking about some of the most ardent Hibs fans admitting that Celtic were superb in that first half hour. I would argue that it was the best 30 minutes of football we've seen from Celtic this season, and then indeed under Ange, obviously, to the point where Hibs fans were actually leaving the ground after the third goal. A few minutes after that, Bukura scored a fourth. Kyogo almost scored a fourth. And at that stage, I'm looking at it thinking, this could be anything. This could be a 5 or 6-0 drubbing. What a way to rinse your hoodoo. You know, we were going on almost 8 years without a league win at Easter Road. But what I was more impressed with, okay, Hibs scored their goal, right? And we'll have a wee chat about that and a couple of wee tweaks that I'm sure Ange will be making as the season goes on in terms of the defence. But at that stage, we didn't panic. We controlled the game. There was a composure. And I just think the game management, which is something that I personally have been critical of Ange in the past of with regards to his game management, the game management was spot on. And we completely controlled that. Yeah, and there's a couple of incidents where Hart got us out of jail. But let's be honest, that's what he's there for. You know, he's a goalie, and if Hibs get a chance, they get a chance. And we'll talk about it, we'll give him full credit for the 2 saves in particular that he did make. But I was so impressed, and I think that's a huge turning point over the last 5 games that I've seen, is the game management. I thought up at Pittodrie, JP, that I'm not going to say we were lucky, but I thought that Aberdeen were far better than Celtic in the second half. But we showed a character to actually get that winner that day. And it seems to have given us a jag in the arm. And I just think that composure and that control that we've shown since then is the type of quality that could actually see us through this season. I'm going to answer the question, from what you've seen in the last 5 games, I know it's a long season, do you think that we could be challenging for this title? I'm not getting too carried away, JP. I know, it's only 5 games, but I think we've seen enough. I think we've seen the 2 sides of Ange Postecoglou in these last 5 games.
Well, I certainly think we'll be in the conversation. I'm not going to sit here, especially on a video that's recorded, that can get replayed back and say, yeah, we're going to win the league and all this sort of nonsense, because I've never really subscribed to thinking like that, because I think that's the kind of thing that even if you're talking to your friends and off air and it's not recorded, it kind of comes back to bite you. And I get so annoyed when I hear and see fans of the other team coming on this and comments and, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's just like, well, okay, you're going to do that, fine. Let's see what happens. So let's see what happens. Ange Postecoglou has been ridiculed by the support of the club that we're up against, to the point that they're willing him to be our model of Pedro Caixinha. Pedro Caixinha is an individual. Ange Postecoglou is an individual. It doesn't work like that where this is your turn to get this guy or whatever. It's not like that. Plus, Ange Postecoglou has come with a far better pedigree than Pedro Caixinha has, and I'm seeing a lot more from him as a man and a football manager than I did from Pedro Caixinha. Simple as that. So I think we'll be, in the mix for sure. I mean, we're winning away games that we couldn't win last season. And I've already seen somebody, a Rangers fan, comment and say, let's not kid ourselves on. They're not half as bad as they were last season, and we're not anywhere near as good as we were last season. So there's got to be a coming together of that gap, and then we'll just see what happens at the other side of it, you know. But yeah, I guess it will depend on injuries and suspensions and penalty kicks being given that might not be penalty kicks. That's going to play a part as well, because I still can't get my head around that last night. I mean, what was that supposed to have been? The only thing is that Bates doesn't complain, and I know people will go, "Oh well, obviously he's not going to complain. He's a former Rangers player." But how in the hell is that a penalty? Like, Sakala goes in, try and headed it and makes an absolute mess of it, and there's to me there doesn't seem to be any contact with Bates, and he goes down, and the next thing is a penalty. But the only thing is, if Bates comes out and says, "Yeah, I tugged him," and you can't see it in the camera. If he tugs him from behind, you can't see it. That's the only thing. But I don't know what you're thinking.
Well, my view on it is it was an appalling decision. And like you say, if there's something that I've not seen yet and somebody can prove me wrong, or if the player comes out and says that he was guilty, then fair enough, I'll hold my hands up. And I, like yourself, I've seen it numerous times. I was concentrating on Celtic last night, but, you know, when Bruni scores a flying header at Ibrox, you know, my attention is going to be taken elsewhere. So I was keeping an eye on it, and I've watched it numerous times. And from my perspective, looking at that, observing in as balanced a way as I possibly can, it was a shocking decision, an absolutely shocking decision. But I'm going to be talking about how that affects Celtic as well in other ways, in terms of the actual refereeing over games, because, you know, last night I'm watching Tommy Rogic, you know, roll back the years, JP. It was a vintage display, but he was only on the park for 44 minutes because he got booted off it. And I think that it's been something that has been as prevalent as ever this season. It started off at Tynecastle, and we've seen Halliday having a shockery tackle on McGregor. Now, I want people to get involved in the comments here, because there's no way, this is just from memory, there's no way that I'm going to have remembered every bad tackle. Some, I would even say, have been targeted. So you look at Rogic, you know, and you just think Gogic has gone for him. That's his game plan. I mean, he got a booking, JP, and yeah, he was on a booking for most of the game. But 2 or 3 bad tackles to such a degree that Rogic has to go off injured. McGregor was lucky on match day 1 against Hearts at Tynecastle. That was an absolutely shocking challenge by Halliday. The other ones I can think of, Fuchs against McCarthy at Celtic Park against Dundee United. Terrible tackle. McCarthy comes off. It comes off at half-time. Last night, Gogic against Rogic. Siegrist against Abada. Let's not forget the kick on Abada in that Dundee United game. Everybody just kind of looks on. The officials just play on. It's fine. You can kick a Celtic player. Now, Power against Turnbull. Yeah, he's seen red. I think he's one of the dirtiest players in the Scottish League, Alan Power. And then...
And clumsiest. That penalty he gave away against Rangers. I mean, I know everybody jokes about, penalty Rangers. That was a penalty on Sunday. There's no two ways about it. So you can't... I'm not sitting here as some sort of biased Celtic fan who's not going to call it as I see it. That was a penalty. Last night wasn't a penalty. So, but that was a penalty on Sunday, and of course it was Power. Of course it was him. You know, no discipline, no need to make that tackle in the box like he did, and yeah, he's cost his team dearly because they lost. They didn't get anything out of that game as a result. It gave Rangers the momentum, got it back to 1 each, and obviously they got the winner. But yeah, you were saying.
Well, he's one of the players, JP, before I get back onto this list, because it's quite lengthy, but he's one of the players that we've seen in Scottish football over the years. He's dirty. He's a dirty player. Simple as that. Kane. Let's not forget Kane, St Johnston against Cameron Carter-Vickers. And the only one I can't remember who the target was Zanata for Wraith Rovers. 2 bookings in about 6 minutes and off he trots. He was sent off. Power was sent off. But the big question for me is, you look at the Porteous tackle. That's the one that's kind of prompted this discussion last night. Yet another one. The Porteous tackle on McGregor. McGregor's looking down. His shin. You can see the 2 big gashes on it. JP, at what point are we going to end up in a situation like with Karamoko Dembele, who's ended up having to go for surgery? A terrible injury that he's had. You know, we've had other players who have been out for long, long spells. And we, as a club, I think, need to stand up to this, because it's not just one or two. You can't just say it's the Robbie the Green. Every club's been a fit. I mean, that was 8 or 9 examples there. And we're only in October. So at what point does it stop? What can the club do to actually take a stand here? Because someone's going to get seriously injured, JP.
See, if the club do come out and do anything, they'll just get ridiculed. Every single other club will absolutely go, oh, look at Celtic greeting and all that. You know, everybody will say, oh, these decisions happen to all of us. And it's you know, it's the same set of rules and the same referees for every game. And you could argue that, but you've pointed out quite a lot of prominent examples. The McGregor one last night, I watched that back a few times, and I'm pretty sure. Like, so the guy that commentates on Hibs TV is a friend of mine. I've known him for a long time. His name's Cliff Pike. Really good guy, very good sort of football commentator voice. And I'm pretty sure last night he said, yeah, Porteous has probably been lucky there. We know he's got that in his game, and it's just like, he's gone in reckless. He's gone in reckless, and he's tried to argue the case with the referee, argue the case with McGregor. McGregor's pulling down his socks and going, look what you've just done. There's the evidence right there. What more do you want? You know, why have I got a mark on me? I shouldn't have a mark on me, you know? It's the I mean, I know everyone's going on about the Porteous tackle at Ibrox. I've seen that a lot of times. He doesn't touch a Rebo, but he goes in hard, and that area of the park is a bit of a weird place to go in that hard. The Rebo rolling about, you know, pretending he was injured, I've got no time for that, you know. But I mean, obviously that contributed to Porteous being sent off. But last night he was really lucky not to get a red again. You know, I mean, why wasn't that a straight red? You know, he comes in reckless, not in control, and actually hits McGregor, actually makes contact. It wasn't as if McGregor's rolling around going, you know, you nearly got me, but I'll pretend you did. You know, it's that guy needs, you know, to be spoken to and just told to calm down a bit. You know, I know it's hard when you're getting beat, and you're maybe not used to getting beat by Celtic. Obviously, as we know, we've not won there for so long, and they'll have been wanting to cling on to that record or whatever. But you can't go doing that. You know, it's just, I wouldn't want to see it from Celtic players, and it's not nice seeing it from especially a Scottish player. I mean, Porteous is sort of been talked about for internationals on the periphery. I mean, surely the manager, Steve Clark's not going to want somebody like that involved, because that's liability, Pat. I mean, you're in a crucial qualifying game, and Porteous is playing and gets himself sent off. Like, you know, what are you going to do then? No,
you're absolutely right. The big concern for me is, well, we're going to be talking about Ange and the job he's done thus far. But the big thing that can knock you off track is a series of injuries. I mean, we are still contending with a series of injuries to top players. JP, I mean, James Forrest is still out, Julien's still out. We've just started bringing some of the players back who we'll talk about, and Mikey Johnston, etc. Kyogo, after his bad injury that he sustained playing for Japan. And that's my concern. You know, you take McGregor out that team and the Celtic team doesn't function the same way. You take Kyogo out the side, same thing happens. I'll tell you right now, you take Cameron Carter-Vickers out of that Celtic side, then you've got an issue. You take Joe Hart out, that's the spine of your team. And if any of them get injured due to one of these reckless tackles, it can actually knock your title challenge right off track, you know? And that's my big concern at the moment, JP, and that's why we're highlighting it. We won the game, we won it well, one of the best performances of the season. But yeah, shocking refereeing and really, really poor play on the part of the players. You mentioned Porteous there. I've seen his name being linked to various clubs. He's one of Hibs' star players. I've also seen Doig and Nisbet linked with Celtic and others. I tell you what, and I know it was a bad day at the office last night for Hibs, I wouldn't take any of the three of them at Celtic.
Well, the Doig thing, I remember seeing that he was obviously linked with us and linked with teams down south, and there was a figure of 4 to 5 million being bandied about. But there's been quite a few Hibs fans that I've seen commenting on things and posting about Doig, going, if we were to get that for him, I think it would be, pretty good business, because he's maybe not as good right now or as they thought he was. I saw a little 3-4 minute video of him at one point, and I thought he had a look at Kieran Tierney about him. Just the way that he had that kind of, stamina and will to just, batter up and down the line and make tackles and, clean tackles as well. So, I mean, I know he was up against it last night. Look, the whole Hibs team were up against it last night, especially their back line, because that's Mikey Johnston, we've not spoke about him. I thought he played really well coming into the mix and playing as part of that front three. So they were all up against it last night. So I don't know if I could judge him on that, but I think maybe our knee-jerk reaction was to go after the best players in the league, so to speak. And I remember we spoke about that quite a lot last season. We were thinking, where are we going to get the money from to buy players? And we've ended up with a player in our ranks, Tony Ralston, who is performing at a level that none of us would have thought that he could perform at. I mean, no wonder he put his hand to his ear when he scored. He scored more goals than Ryan Kent. I know Ryan Kent's been injured, but Ryan Kent, I think, Hadji and Scott Wright, all their sort of supposed player front forwards or number 10s, whatever you want to call it. Tony Ralston scored more goals than them. So
you've brought him up. So I'm going to lead that. I'm going to use that as a segue into the Tony Ralston section of the show. We will get round to speaking to you about Ange as well. But let's have a look at some of the comments coming in, because you're viewing in your numbers. We're sitting at over 1,000 live at this moment in time. You've all tuned in big numbers last night as well. So thank you all for your support. Paddy Lavery, who is a regular ACSOM viewer, great game last night, and there was me thinking the title race was over. Absolutely. When you said that, I heard it in an Australian accent when you actually said it there. Jake Ryan comes in to say that we win every game between now and the 2nd of January, and we go into the derby knowing a win guarantees us to go first. Well, we can go first on Saturday. If we want to be champions, we have to prove we can win the derby matches. That's an excellent point, JP, because as well as everything else that was going on last season, it was quite clear that they had our number. Rangers had Celtic's number. It's one of these things we're talking about. Certain stadiums that we go to and we don't perform well. And they kind of have a hold over us. And the Tony Macaroni has been one of those stadiums. And Easter Road until last night was one of those stadiums. But one fixture that seems to have turned into that, and we need to get our monkey off our back here, is Rangers, because we've not beaten them for some time now. So I think that's a great point. We are in a right good spell at the moment. If we beat Livingston on Saturday, prior to Rangers visiting Motherwell on the Sunday, we can go top of the league. That's tremendous. But he's right in what he says, Jake. Once it comes down to it, the 2nd of January is going to be massive. And we need to prove that we can win that game as well. You brought up Tony Ralston. Now, I'm going to have to give Amy Canavan a bit of credit here, because back in January, when obviously we were down to the bare bones of the squad due to the issues around the Dubai and isolation, etc., etc. We all know what happened. Tony Ralston gets thrown in. And I remember on the post-match having the audacity to say that he was my man of the match, JP.
I remember that, yeah.
And I got loads of stick for it, because it was like there was maybe a perception he can't possibly be man of the match because he's no good. And I got a lot of stick for it. And anyway, he drops back out the side. One game, he comes in. It was his first game for Celtic in 18 months, JP. He drops back out the side. And I remember we were talking, after that about who we should bring. And Amy did say, I'd play Tony Ralston. And then Amy got the same deluge of comments coming through. Listen, that's fair enough, because, I'm not going to say I told you so. I just thought he played well against Livy. Anyway, he's come in, 22 years of age. He's now that was his 40th appearance last night for Celtic. And he's made those appearances over a 5-year period. So it just shows you how infrequent his appearances have been until this season. Last night was his 4th goal. he likes to score a crackery a goal as well, JP. And I just think that he's performed so well that Juranovic is playing out of position to accommodate him at right back.
Mm-hmm.
As he finally shaken off the scapegoat tag, which has kind of like, been hanging around Tony Ralston, so that like last January there, if I mentioned that he had a good game, no, he can't possibly have a good game because it's Tony Ralston. Has he finally shaken that off?
Well, the only thing that I ever sort of threw at him was the fact that he'd been there so long, and your question was, why is he not being given an opportunity to prove him? Like, we've gone through this, string of right backs that have come in on loan and disappeared, with very little effect. Moritz Bauer, Jeremy Toljan, there are others, and Ralston's been there or thereabouts the whole time. I know he's been out on loan himself, but when he's gone out on loan to the clubs that he's gone out on loan to, I don't recall ever hearing glowing reports that he was this sort of man of the match figure at Dundee United or St Johnston, I think it was. So you're left thinking, well, if he's not doing it there, how the hell is he going to do it for us? At such a bigger level, bigger club, bigger expectation. But whatever's going on there, if it's Ange Postecoglou or what, or if he's just flicked a switch and thought, I've been given another contract, I've been given a chance to do this. I know I'm not the best football player in the world or the best right back in the world, but I'm going to give it everything. And you've got to sort of applaud that mentality, because you can actually see it shining through on the pitch that the guy doesn't want to get beat, and he wants to give everything. He doesn't want to let his side down. He doesn't want to let the manager down, and he doesn't want to let the fans down either, because he knows that we're all sitting here going, how are you getting a game here? And to be able to have the satisfaction of proving us wrong, if you like, must be what a motivation to have. And if that's the motivation that's driving him right now, then keep it coming, because it was so many people last night were like, Ralston man of the match, Ralston man of the match, Ralston man of the match. And this is a venue that we've not won at in the league since 2014, and you're telling me that a Scottish 22-year-old right back who seemingly was out the door is performing to be the man of the match, then got to be really, really happy with that. And I'm happy for him as well, because I've said it millions of times to friends on this, always love to see Scottish players doing well at Celtic, especially those that have come through our academy. There's nothing better. I would love it if all 11 players were Scottish, and well, maybe 10 in Kyogo, but it's that's an impossible dream. That's Lisbon Lions stuff. But we're doing well at the moment, and Ralston's a big part of that. And like you say, he's keeping Juranovic out of. He's keeping a Croatian international out of his actual natural position, because you can't drop him. He's undroppable. When would you have thought we would be saying those words? I mean, especially when you contrast it back to January and think that he came in, played the game, played really well, and then got bombed out. Yeah. So,
I mean, I think there's an element of perception, obviously, with a lot of different areas of the game, and opinion, of course. And it becomes easy to have a scapegoat. And a lot of the time, the scapegoat is one of these players that's come through the ranks. And we've seen Jamesy Forrest getting that kind of treatment as well. JP, I look at Forrest and McGregor as being part of a similar era, that they are contemporaries in terms of their age, there or thereabouts. And then you've got another couple in Mikey Johnston and Tony Ralston, both 22, of course. And you just hope that there's another wave coming through, maybe Montgomery, that kind of level. Scott Robertson's looked good when he's come through as well. But when you're looking at Tony Ralston, I always make this point that, for him to have shown that mental strength, to have barely featured, to not be fancied a great deal by virtually every manager that's managed you. I think Brendan Rodgers rated him highly, gave him a new and improved deal. But, there's been a succession of managers thereafter that didn't really fancy him. But he's come through it. So fair play to him, and I love to see that. And I think that the big question will be, and it's being raised right now here by Egyptian King, about his new contract. Because, of course, he was given that 1-year deal just to give us a right back. We had no right backs at the club. He's given the 1-year deal. So, he's going to be a free agent at the end of the season. Is it time that we sit him down and talk about, have we started, I think, maybe talking about an improved deal?
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, I'm sure he was as surprised as any of us to be given the deal when he was, to get that extra year. Because, I mean, he was surely one of the players that we sat here saying was going to be for the off. When we're sitting here talking about the rebuild and the mass exodus, Ralston was not one that we expected to get a new contract. We definitely said that, I'm sure. So you'd think that talks would have been had. It doesn't look to me that Anthony Ralston would be making noises to go anywhere. I mean, from that comment, that's a kind of, we need to get him signed now, or we'll lose him. But why would you want to go anywhere else? I mean, he's got the hunger and desire. Anthony Ralston hasn't won anything as a Celtic player. I know he's been thereabouts, but he can't. You said it yourself. He's played 40 games over 5 years. He's not been a guy that's contributed throughout a season or throughout a cup campaign that can legitimately put his hands on that trophy, lift it up and go, I'm a massive part of this. And that's the hunger that was missing last season, because all those guys had done it so much. And, obviously there's loads of other factors as well, but that I said it at the time. I said, I think the players are just bored and sick of winning. And, having guys, I know Tom Rogic has obviously been part of that, but not as much, really. Tom Rogic hasn't been the mainstay in a Celtic side and played through it an entire season and had that same level of satisfaction. He's not done a Callum McGregor and played like what seems like about 100 games in a season. And Tony Ralston hasn't had that, and that hunger is surely what's driving him on to be a guy that puts his hand on a trophy and goes, I'm not just in a trackie here with a medal, and my shorts are dirty and I've got my hands in the cup because I deserve to be here.
Yeah, like Marvin Compere springs to mind. Going up to get his medals. The interesting thing is, obviously doing these bulletins so often, JP, is the notes are there. So I had a quick look at where we were when we were in the last transfer window, and the amount of right backs that we were linked with was frightening. So I think that tells its own story. I mean, George Baldock was one of them who was mentioned, Nathan Byrne at Derby at the time, Aurelio Buta, another right back, and Jan Kuto, you'll remember as well. We did finally get Juranovic in the door, but as you say, Tony Ralston's playing so well. Talking about play acting, what was Juranovic all about last night? I mean, there was a bit of contact on his eye, but, he sponged it.
I have to be honest. I was working a show last night, and I had the game on Hibs pay-per-view. With Dougie Donnelly and John Hughes. John Hughes constantly referring to Hibs as we, which was quite strange because I know he's a Hibs fan from youth, but I always associate him with Celtic. I mean, maybe that's just because I grew up at a time when he was centre half, goal against Rangers and all that. Great guy. But I watched the Hibs pay-per-view, so I was there was moments in the second half and the first half where I was dipping in and out, so I didn't have my full concentration on the game. So I have to plead ignorance on the Juranovic thing. I don't know what happened.
Well, I mean, there was contact with his left eye, I think, with somebody's hand. But, he made such a meal of it, and the reason I brought it up is because you said you don't like to see it, and I was a wee bit embarrassed for him last night. I think maybe an eyelash went in his eyeball or something like that, JP, and it upset him somewhat. But the other player that you mentioned there, Mikey Johnston, I was thinking, he was coming back in, there was a few cameo appearances. He was looking really sharp again in the substitute appearances that he made. I think it was fairly bold that Ange Postecoglou decided that perhaps Abada's gone a wee bit quiet and Johnston's come in and looked pretty lively, and he gets his first start of the season. What did you make of his performance last night?
My friend Chris was texting me about that, and he said, it kind of felt like maybe Mikey Johnston's come back and bulked up. He looks stronger, and it could be that this is his Ryan Christie moment. That's what Chris said to me. You know, like there's Ryan Christie moment at Murrayfield where he kind of gets an opportunity and grasps it. I suppose not through injury, more through form, really. Because I mean, Abada's form has dipped, but the guy's he's just turned 20, so you know, and he's still probably adapting to life in Glasgow, and there's no way, you know, just because Abada's put in some questionable crosses in games and not scored for a bit, I'm not going to write Abada off or anything like that, but maybe he just needs to sort of get his head down and work a bit harder and know that he's got a challenge. Because he was nailed on first name in the team sheet, you know, and you know, to suddenly come from a different country, different environment, and then be like 19 as he was at the time and be like your first choice in the Celtic team, that might allow your head to think, oh well, I'm comfortable here, I've got no reason to worry, you know, I'm all's good, you know, got a good looking girlfriend, probably got a great flat, you know, life's suddenly gone like that. But then you need to still keep doing the business on the pitch, and so to have a bit of a volley up the rear is no bad thing for somebody at that age. And you know, Mikey Johnston looks like he's worked hard, and you know, will hopefully take this opportunity to kick on and then make it his jersey to lose. And then Abada's got a target to aim for, to say like, well, I won that jersey back and I need to work harder to get it back. And that's surely what football and squads is all about. So you don't get comfortable, you don't rest on your laurels. And you know, again, Mikey Johnston, Scottish player, threatened to be good for a long, long time. There's the sort of famous the Neil Wynn thing where he tells him F off as he's walking off injured. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't want that to be all you associate Mikey Johnston with, you know, because right now that is what quite a lot of people go to in their heads when they think of him. There's not really been any big moments from Mikey Johnston in games. And I know that he was thrown to the Wolves a little bit, or the Lions, at Ibrox when he was played up front.
Lions?
There's no Lions dead, or is they? And he was thrown to the Wolves a bit with that, and I felt sorry for him because he's never a striker. He's never a forward in a million years. You know, that's not his game. So it was unfortunate for him in that respect. But you know, we'll see what happens with him now that he's playing in this system, playing in a system with a Portuguese wonder kid and a Japanese established international. You know, it's the quality has gone, you know, pretty high there for him to play alongside. So excited to see him on the big pitch on Saturday against Livingston. And the team talk surely for Saturday is just play them that game at Ammanvale and say, right, do everything today that you didn't do in that game. And I would hope that we see the rip roaring, free scoring and never boring Celtic. So against Livingston, because I was at that game at Ammanvale and it's still sticking in my throat that we left there with nothing against. You know, come on, no disrespect, but that team, we saw it last night, should never have been getting beat at Livingston. And I know there was big question marks raised over everything after that game. You know, there was panic buttons being pressed left, right and centre. The other side of the city was rejoicing and thinking the league was theirs and everything else. But, you know, I didn't press the panic button, but I certainly was, you know, concerned at the fact that it was another game at Livingston that we hadn't won. So I'd like to reverse that on Saturday, hopefully, and inflict some pain on them for a change.
Oh, definitely. Now, the thing with Mikey Johnston, you mentioned getting thrown up at Ibrox up front, and I don't know how damaging it was, but you know he was kind of the scapegoat after that. I do recall, and there's two kind of decisions to be made. I think he was at a bit of a crossroads, Mikey Johnston, because you can go down that route. I think that Lewis Morgan, when he was at Celtic, went down whereby, you know, in terms of his physicality, he didn't seem to change in any way, shape or form, and his Celtic career ultimately ended. And he's doing really well over in the MLS, etc., and that's great. But the other option is you do the Ryan Christie, whereby you have that motivation to complete. I mean, Christie transformed his physical presence. And I think that I was talking to someone pretty close with the club at the time. They were saying that, you know, you put some like 1.5 stone in weight on in that period. And quite clearly, it was all on muscle, JP. And obviously, there was that decision made that if he wanted to up his game, if he wanted to take that next step to the next level, physically he had to improve, and he did. I don't think Lewis Morgan improved, and he didn't have a future at Celtic. I hope that Mikey Johnston has a future at Celtic. I do have this fear that this is his last kind of chance saloon this season, but he seems to be grabbing it, and I'm glad that he is. It also means that, you know, for many seasons, we have either had a couple of good wingers, one on each side, but we've never really had that competition. I think we had it for a wee while when Paddy Roberts came in and he was pushing Jamesy Forrest.
Sinclair.
And what we've got now is we've got a situation where, well, Jota can play left or right, as can Abada. You've got Jamesy Forrest, you've got Mikey Johnston, you've also got Dembele when he gets back, and I'm not sure if he'll be back this season, to be fair. But you've got that competition, and that is brilliant to have. That's a great luxury for a manager to have. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't having a massive go at Juranovic. Tony McCann comes in to stand up for our Croatian. And that's fair enough. That's fair enough. It was just, you know, JP was telling me that he doesn't like seeing players making the most of it, and I thought Juranovic was. Maybe he's got a really sore eye this morning. Sorry, Joseph, I really do apologise. He hits a mean penalty kick. This is all around Ange Postecoglou. I was seeing the two sides of Ange Celtic. When he walked in, he walked into a fractured squad following a disastrous season, JP, and a season that we followed blow by blow. We as a club failed to bring in enough players. So we've gone into the Midtjylland game underprepared, you know, personnel-wise. We then moved into an injury crisis, which was not of his making. It's just one of these things. And we had half a dozen, 7, 8 players sometimes, important players who would be playing in the first team, all injured. We lost 3 of our top players in Chris Ayer, Edouard and Ryan Christie. And you looked at that first quarter of fixtures, and we had a run of away fixtures that, you know, took in Tynecastle, Ibrox, the Tony Macaroni Stadium, Pittodrie, Fir Park, Easter Road. So when you look at that whole scenario, the set of circumstances, a man comes in who has got no experience of the Scottish game, very little experience managing in Europe. Yet after the first quarter, we're going into Saturday's game, sitting second, and if we win, albeit it might only be for 24 hours, we will be at the top of that league. When you think about everything that he's had to overcome, JP, and there's been criticism on ACSOM, yeah, there has been. I mean, he's not done everything 100% correct, because obviously we were sitting at one point having lost half our league games. Did you expect us to be in this position so early on under Ange?
Well, no would be my initial answer. But there was something about him early on that made me think that he knew what he was doing, you know, and he had an idea of what to do. And obviously he heard so much stuff about him and what he'd done from various journalists based in Japan, Australian, you know, Jared from Celtics Down Under had talked about him, and, you know, had a fairly detailed knowledge of him from watching his career. Obviously, he's going to be interested in a successful Australian coach who's coached his national side. So I'd listened to all that, and I kind of thought that, you know, there's a chance that he can, you know, not turn water into wine, but certainly do something with the cards that he's been dealt. And he's doing something with those cards that maybe other people couldn't have done. And I include Eddie Howe in that, and I include quite a lot of the other names that were probably, you know, guys like, I mean, God forbid, I love him, but Roy Keane, you know, where would Celtic be right now if Roy Keane was the manager? I don't know. I don't know if we'd be in this situation. I don't know if the players would have responded to him in the way that they've responded to Ange Postecoglou. That's obviously speculation on my part. I don't know that for a fact. But Roy Keane is still sitting in a TV studio. He's not in a dugout. So, you know what I mean? If he was that good a manager or coach, he would be in demand and he would be doing a job, you know. Mm-hmm. And Eddie Howe is still without a job. So Ange Postecoglou, for having the balls to take this on, because let's face it, we all sat here at the start of the season going, this is an absolute, you know, not a car crash, but I mean, it was all over the place. It was just so disjointed. And in the midst of that, he's lost the CEO of the club, who he sat next to at the fan presser, and Dominic Mackay, extolled the virtues of Ange Postecoglou and sort of saying, look, this is a guy I wanted to come in, and I'm so happy he's here, and I'm really confident that he's going to deliver success. And now he's gone. So you could forgive him for feeling a little bit kind of out on his own. He's obviously not got his own coaching staff in as well. I also said I was quite happy for anybody to stick about and be part of Celtic, as long as it was Ange Postecoglou's call. I just said that so many times. I didn't want this kind of, disjointed, fractured setup where not everybody's singing from the same hymn sheet, because that genuinely and generally doesn't lead to success. So if he's galvanised the people that were there, that were, heads down after last season, and, everybody thought that we were a million miles away from doing anything. We're in the Europa League. Yes, we've been beaten twice. Yes, we got horsed at home off Leverkusen. Of course, there's a gulf still between us and, top teams. They're a top team in the Bundesliga. You see how strong that league is, that Bayern Munich cuffed Leverkusen, and then Bayern Munich got beat off, was it Mönchengladbach the other night? Every team in that league can take goals off each other. It's frightening. So we are a wee bit away in Europe, but we're there. And the fact that we actually got there in the first place is a huge achievement. And that was his first big box that he ticked. And now he's got through one of the most difficult run of fixtures. I mean, the Amon Vale one is an anomaly. Okay, there was a lot of injuries at that time, but I still think we should have come away with at least a point in that game. And that kind of is the one out of all the away games that I'm like, how did that not happen? The Hearts game came too soon. The Rangers game could have gone either way. We obviously had our chances in that game. We weren't embarrassed, and he clawed a bit of respect back from the drubbing that we got there in whatever month it was, March or April. So yeah, I mean, I'm as a Celtic season ticket holder, as a fan of 33 years, I am sitting here, very optimistic about what's happening at the club right now, on the field. Above that, that's a little bit more. That's a different conversation. But like I said last week, what Ange Postecoglou is doing in the pitch is deflecting away from all of the stuff above. But they better sort that out. When they've got the opportunity. I mean, maybe mid-season's not the right time, but the structure and everything has to be looked at. At the appropriate time, I think.
I think so. I mean, when you were talking there, I thought back to what you were saying last week. He has been such an ambassador for all these guys sitting in the boardroom, in that he's taken the heat off them in a big, big way. That the light is shining on the park at the moment because of the way that he's been able to galvanise the side, pull the side together, yet deploy his philosophy and his style as well. I always think back to conversations I had with Jim Orr when I first met Jim, and we were talking about the Save Our Celts movement that he was a part of. Yeah. Must have been about 3 years ago, eh?
It was August 2018, yeah.
Aye, and it was a good day. You were wearing a very smart Celtic away strip, by the way. And Jim Orr spoke about the fact that it was difficult sometimes to maintain the momentum. You would get a wee bit of momentum going, and then Celtic would win a game or get to a cup final or maybe sign a player or change a manager. And a lot of the fans' focus back then would go back on the team, and it would stay away from the boardroom. And I can see it. It's human nature, absolutely. I mean, nobody, I think, falls in love with football so that we can sit and talk for hours and hours on end about the board. Nobody does that. It's
what about the structure of the club and all that?
It's a byproduct, isn't it? I mean, we want to talk about the football. But because of all these decisions that were being made incorrectly over a period of time, it shone a light on the boardroom last season. And for anybody who was ahead of the game, maybe even before last season, I know that Kevin Graham used to get a lot of stick for going on about the board when we were winning trebles, but, it came home to roost eventually. And we're not going to labour it today, but, if changes don't happen behind the scenes, obviously it will be a topic of conversation on the broadcast going forward. And I think that John comes in, John Duncan, welcome back, John. You're a long-time viewer of ACSOM and you're watching it on YouTube. Ange walked into a broken club and it's on the mend. I can see that on the park. I think that some of the big issues still exist. The Celtic Trust, I think, they worked hard to get a couple of resolutions heard at the earlier than normal AGM. And I think that these questions have to continue to be asked, and the drum continues to be banged as well. A wee musical reference, She Bangs the Drums here. Let's talk about music just for a moment, because I know that a lot of people love it on the Thursday Bulletin. But Mogwai, a band that I've loved for years, a band that you have a long association with, won a very special award for their latest album, JP. Tell us all about it.
We've got it. I have it here. I'll plug it.
There you go. Beautiful.
Yeah.
The records always are, though. You know what I mean? The records always are beautiful that Mogwai releases. They put a lot of emphasis on the design and the look and the aesthetic of it.
Yeah, no, I was delighted that they won the award. I mean, it was either, surely for me, it was either them or Arab Strap, because Arab Strap's record's also brilliant. I mean, their first release in 14 or 15 years. But Mogwai winning it was great, and it was cool to see Stuart genuinely surprised, I think, at winning it. I don't think he was expecting to win it, because sometimes with these awards they don't go for the so-called bigger band. They'll go for like an up and coming act or a completely left to centre act, so as to be seen to not be obvious or whatever. But I mean, the Mogwai album is really, really great, and is one of my lockdown albums. Sat and listened to it on my own here when you couldn't go and see anybody, and I did the Twitter listening party when they did that. So you were getting insight into the tracks. Richie Sacramento, which is one of the tracks on the record, is their joke name for Ryushi Sakamoto, the composer. So that Richie Sacramento was the title. I found that out through the Twitter listening party, and yeah, obviously Celtic fans as well, which it was nice to see a Celtic minded band win an award. And I'm looking forward to seeing them in a couple of weeks. They're playing at the concert hall, sold out at the Glasgow Concert Hall. So looking forward to that. In fact, I actually said to Ray, who manages the band, who's a really good friend of mine, who manages the Twilight Sad as well, and I said to him, see that months ago when we were talking about will live music be back, because they announced the November gig in, I don't know, February, March or something like that. And I remember speaking to him at the time and saying, do you think that gig will happen? Because we were so unsure as to whether gigs were going to come back, in the near future. And Ray was like, in his usual studious way, was like, yeah, I'm pretty confident they'll happen. And I went, right, if they do happen, here's what we're doing. I said, we're going to stand at the bar just before doors, and we're going to get a drink at the bar. And I said, what are you drinking? And he said, I think I'll have a Balvenie. And I went, right, okay, I'll have one of them as well. I said, we'll say nothing and we will clink our glasses together as we watch the crowds come in to the gig, and there'll be an unspoken moment. And I said, that's what's happening. And I can't wait for that moment, because I genuinely didn't know if that would happen. Like, genuinely, who knew if we were going to get live music back at that time?
I know.
Because, it seemed a million miles away at that point. So I look forward to that clink of glass with Ray, and then watching Mogwai destroy the concert hall with their amazing music.
Absolutely. Listen, you enjoy that moment. It's a long time coming for you, JP, and well done to Mogwai. You brought something to my mind when you mentioned Arab Strap. Sorry for everybody in the comments who don't want to listen to music. I'll keep this quick. I'll keep it quick.
We've spoken about Celtic and Celtic only for the whole time. So,
and Mogwai are big Celtic fans, so bear with us. Humour us for a moment. I used to do music interviews before I moved into football writing, and I was interviewing Malcolm Middleton from Arab Strap and I always try to throw in a few wee questions about football because I always think they go hand in hand, JP, and I just took it for granted that he was a Falkirk fan. So I asked him about John Hughes, who at the time was a Falkirk manager, going back a few years. And I think the way he answered it was he was talking about the director who directed the Breakfast Club, John Hughes. So I just ran with it. But I was asking him about Yogi.
No, neither of them care about football. They were definitely more into.
I was pretty clear, though.
Yeah, they were more into music and everything that goes along with it. I think Aidan absolutely hates. No, I don't think. I know Aidan hates football. So, it's not likely to be something they would have knowledge on. Especially something a bit more left field like Yogi. You know what I mean? When we ask them about like Ronaldo or like Pele or something like that, they might have knowledge. But yeah.
Hey, listen, if you want to talk about the Breakfast Club, I'm happy with that. Before we go, obviously we've got a chance to go top of the league on Saturday. I don't think I ever took it for granted when that was the norm, but it will be tremendous. It'll be a tremendous achievement, I think, at this stage for Ange to take the team there. And, whether or not it lasts for 24 hours is another thing. I don't think Fir Park's an easy place to go and get a result, JP. Mm-hmm. However, when we go into that game, having watched last night's game, and I don't know what the situation is with Rogic, if it's an injury that's going to keep him out, what are you looking at going into the Livy game? Are you going to try and keep that momentum? Are you going to give Mikey Johnston another start? I mean, what kind of changes, if any, would you make?
Well, I'm always a big sort of fan of if a player plays in a winning side, it'd be quite sort of quite harsh to drop him unless he's got an eye on Ferencváros is next Thursday, right? I'm pretty sure away.
Yeah,
that's obviously a big game as well. So I would be happy for him to do whatever he wants to do with if he's thinking about the next step. It's like the game of snooker, isn't it? You're looking about your next move. So whatever he does, I would be happy with that. But I would probably want to see Mikey Johnston start again, especially on the big pitch. He needs his confidence up. He needs that space on the pitch to do the damage that we know that he's capable of doing. If Rogic doesn't make it, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with him putting Beaton in there and moving Turnbull up to play the 10. I think that would be a no-brainer, really. I mean, I know we've always been critical of Beaton on here, but been critical of Beaton as a centre half, not as a midfielder. So yeah, I would hope to see that. And maybe is it time for James Forrest to be back on the bench? I don't know. I don't know where he is and what stage he's at in his recovery. But to think that we've got someone like James Forrest to come back into the fold, into this side, to play in that system, I mean, he'll surely love that. I would have thought,
Oh, I think so. I mean, that's the thing. We've got a couple of injuries coming back. Long term first teamers coming back. And I'm pretty sure there'll be 2 or 3 new faces coming in January as well, JP. I could talk to you for a lot longer. We never even touched on the performances of the likes of Joe Hart, Cameron Carter-Vickers, who both I thought played particularly well last night.
Great goal by Cameron Carter-Vickers as well. It was obviously a training ground move. Mm-hmm. And, and Cliff Pike, my friend Cliff Pike was just like, I'm sure he could try that another 10 times and he wouldn't be able to hit it the same way that he did there. But, I love Cliff's voice. It's proper old school football commentary. It's great. It was good. It was also good to hear him commentate on a losing Hibs team against Celtic, because I've heard him commentate on quite a few winning ones. So, but Cam Carter-Vickers, excellent. Joe Hart, brilliant as well. Great saves. And, he's really, really bought into Celtic, and you'll have to see it.
Absolutely. I mean, the first save in particular, 2 minutes after we've taken the lead, he doesn't save that, and it's a different game. I mean, pound for pound, this season, I think it's the best £1 million that we've spent. I just think he's been brilliant. I think he's a massive part in the central defensive partnership starting to take place as well, because as footballers have said to me in the past when I've spoken to them, it's all about that diamond. It's not just the 2 centre halves. It's all about the goalie behind them as well. So I think we've kind of got that right. Starfelt doesn't like the ball on his left foot. I get that. And he's playing on the left side of central defence. But I think defensively he does a lot of good defensive work as well, JP. So I'm pretty confident. And again, when Julian comes back in, he just bolsters it even further. Listen, it's been tremendous. A lot of you have tuned in, so thanks for joining us. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, LinkedIn. If you're watching on YouTube, get yourself subscribed. We'll be giving away some prizes over the next few days. We've got a Bobby Lennox signed and framed print. We've got an Etive watch, beautiful black watch. It could be for you, it could be for a gift. And there's a third prize, which is a couple of tickets to Jim Orr's play Bend It Like Bertie, which is taking place through in the Beacon Arts Centre in Greenock. So get subscribing. If you're already subscribed, this is a question that's been asked a few times. You don't have to unsubscribe and then resubscribe. If you're in, you're in. You're in the competition every month. So thanks everybody for getting involved. And thank you to JP Mason once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.